Hey everybody, welcome back to a brand new episode of Micadelic. I'm Mike Brancatelli, you're you, and today's guest is me. This is an episode with me called It's All a Game with Mike Brancatelli, episode 7 of The Work podcast hosted by Nick Boyle. The Work podcast hosted by Nick Boyle is about more connection, more love, more authenticity, more alignment. And Nick drops in with people who are doing the work, uncovering the deepest parts of our beings to share, connect, and empower us all to do the work too. So I enjoyed this conversation with Nick, and I think I connected with Nick through the Sacred Sons online community called the Brothership Network. And he's like, I got a new podcast and I want to interview a bunch of people. And I was like, yeah, sure, I'll jump on. And he gladly accepted. And I thought we had a good conversation. So I figured I would share that with you guys. And also just I like anytime somebody starts a new podcast and it's good, I want to promote it and I want to encourage it. So I think that what Nick is doing here is good work. He's doing the work, and he's got the podcast, The Work, and I enjoyed being a guest on it. So that's what we're going to hear today is my appearance on his podcast where we talk about It's All a Game. Definitely one of my favorite things to talk about is the nature of reality and human consciousness and our place and time on this planet, how we can relate to ourselves better and our loved ones better and our communities better. And how we can sort of play the game of life in a more enjoyable, pleasant, satisfying, and nourishing way. So, yeah, that's what we'll be hearing today. And this podcast was recorded and released, I believe, December 16th. So some of you may have heard the solo podcast that I put out and the one with Charles Eisenstein. This one was recorded before all that. And I think I told Nick that I was going to release it by the end of December, but I just got caught up with some other things. So apologies, Nick. Here's the podcast that we did together. You could also find it on his podcast feed. He's on Spotify, The Work Podcast, Nick Boyle, and check that out there. He's got some other cool guests on there as well. And yeah, it's a pleasure and a joy to connect with other podcasters. And before we get into it, I'll just say, yeah, if you've got something and you want to invite me to, the best way to reach out to me right now is going to just be through email because I am no longer on social media. I will visit Instagram on my laptop to check DMs, but I don't have the app on my phone anymore. So email is going to be the best way to get in touch with me, mikeadelicpod@gmail.com. It's mikeadelicpod@gmail.com. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to not do too big of like an intro thing here, and we're just going to get into this podcast. But I do want to talk about some things that I'm thinking of bringing and offering, and some different things that I want to do. And I'll put that out in kind of like a mini little solo cast. It'll probably be released right after this one. So stay tuned for that if you're interested in knowing what else is going to be going on with the podcast and things that are happening outside of the digital domain as well. All right, well, I'll just give a shout out to the sponsors who support this show. First of all, thank you to everybody who is a Patreon member. Much love to all of you. So yeah, let's do some shout outs here to all the people that are a part of the Patreon community, that are part of the Micadelic Inner Sanctum. Big shout out to Jose, to Jake, to Ariana, Eric, Leandra, Mackenzie, Sage, Seth, Robert, Joe, Matt, Anna, Jason, Blake, Simon, Jesse, Brandon, Alex, Colin, Camille, John, Richard, of course. Richard, big love to you. Richard has been a Patreon. Richard's been a patron for a long time, and at the $20 tier. And I just have to say, it's people like this not to say that everyone else isn't, worthy of the recognition, of the support that they're giving. Of course, I appreciate everybody, but it really warms my heart to see people like John and Austin and Richard, and of course my main man Hell, who's no longer a part of the Patreon, but has been for such a long time and has contributed, over $1,000 or so to be a part of the community. It just really warms my heart to see people like that really believe in what I'm doing and really wanting to help the show. And I want to, live up to my end of the bargain as well. And I hope I do, and I want to do it more. And so that's what I'll talk about on another episode. But I just want to give a shout out to all those wonderful people, as well as all the people that leave 5-star ratings and reviews on Apple Podcasts and now on Spotify as well. So thank you, Eric. Thank you, Julian. Thank you to those people that go ahead and do that. It really means a lot. And like I said, I'll talk more about that on the shorter kind of solo announcement type episode. And WaveBlock, thank you, WaveBlock, for supporting this show as well. If you want to get 20% off of WaveBlock's amazing EMF blocking technology that you can apply to your AirPods and your phones, it's really great. I love it. I think it's really fantastic. And for $20 with 20% off, you can't go wrong. It's a no-brainer. So please check that out. Get yourself some, because we don't want to be limited by the cords and things like that. We want to move into the future with cool technology, but also keep ourselves safe. And I've definitely experienced the benefits of using the WaveBlock stickers that I've applied to my AirPods and now to my phone. So it's a great way to support the show and then get a cool product and save some money on that product. So check out in the show notes, show description. And if you like this podcast that was done by Nick Boyle, the host of the Work podcast, check out his show. See if there's anything there that resonates with you. And also, he takes submissions for interviews. So I think he has a form on his Spotify. If you go down, it says, request to be a part of the show. If you feel that you have something interesting to contribute in regards to doing the work, reach out to Nick. He's a great guy, great host. He just started his podcast, and I think he's doing a really great thing. And that's why I'm publishing the podcast that we did together here. So without further ado, let's hop into this conversation from December 16th on the Work podcast. It's all a game with, of course, the one and only me. Hope you guys enjoy.
Thank you for being here with me. I appreciate you taking the time. Before I hit the record button, I asked you if there's something alive today, and you said pandemic. What about the pandemic? There's a lot to it.
There's so much, I know. But basically, ever since this thing took off, I recorded a podcast in March of 2020 entitled The Real Virus. And I talked about, it was a solo podcast, and I talked about, like, let's not let this fear and panic take away what it means to be alive and to be human. And I just sense that, I should say that prior to starting my podcast, Micadelic, I was the co-host of a very popular libertarian political podcast called Part of the Problem with Dave Smith, who's a comedian in New York. And him and I were doing comedy together in New York City. And he was sort of in the senior class. I was like the freshman class, if you will.
Right.
But I wound up doing check spots at a club where him and these other comedians who were fairly more ahead of me, I guess I would say, like more experience and stuff. But we developed a friendship, and I had sort of had my waking up moment in 2012 when a lot of things sort of converged for me. It was the one of my first big psychedelic experiences. I had been reading a lot of stuff. about psychedelics, about consciousness. And I'd also been getting into politics because I was very much against the Bush administration. And then I was very pro Obama in '08. And then I would kind of became disillusioned. And then I noticed this guy, Ron Paul, and I was like, what's this guy all about? And then I started stumbling down the rabbit hole, if you will, on all these things. Like I got my second education really around that time, discovering all kinds of thinkers. And, with psychedelics, it was like, oh, okay, this stuff is actually not, what they were saying it was. Like there's actually Harvard professors who are doing studies, and a prestigious scientist invented this. The guy who discovered the double helix and the DNA, Francis Crick, said he was on LSD. Steve Jobs said it was one of the most profound things that he's ever experienced in his life. So that converging with all this other stuff and libertarian philosophy really captured me. And I thought, okay, this is something that really resonates for me. So anyway, fast forward to the beginning of the pandemic, I had sort of kind of gotten away from like the daily minutia of political discourse. That's what we did on my old show, Part of the Problem. We kind of broke down twice a week, Mondays and Fridays. We would just kind of break down what the media was saying, what the government was saying, and just be like, here's the libertarian take on it. Like, this is these are the holes. And so when this thing happened, I was just like, let's be careful. Like, let's not, the reactions to this might possibly be worse than the actual thing itself. So let's not give into the fear. Was my main message, But yeah, it's just really alive for me right now because I feel like I'm not doing enough to put my voice out there, my thoughts out there. I feel like I'm concerned. My brother is actually an NYPD police officer, and he was on the same page as me. We see things a lot differently, but we definitely agree on a lot. I was able to, build bridges with him on a lot of things. And he was kind of in the position that I was, but he recently told me that basically he was forced to get injected because he was going to lose his job. And he's got a family of 3 children and, wife. And the other thing is, who's got time to read about all this stuff and know all the things? And I've been doing it for more than a decade. So I guess I sacrifice a lot of my maybe free time or other areas of my life to stay up to date, or at least to stay informed and to stay sharp on what's happening. And so, yeah, most recently it was just this, thing of, hey, you're coming to New York, we'd like you to get a PCR test or whatever. And over the summer, I got tested for COVID antibodies. I'm positive. I have robust immunity, my doctor said. So
yeah, you do.
I got the paperwork to prove it, because I got it in March of 2020. And I didn't know it at the time, but I was very sick. Probably got it again. So, in my mind, I'm like, I'm fine. I don't know why I have to keep proving that I'm not one of the diseased ones, that I'm not one of the dirty, filthy people who are ruining life for everybody else.
Well, and like even that rhetoric, disease. I was talking to my mom the other day and she called it a disease, and I stopped her dead in her tracks. I'm like, first off, it's not. It's a virus. Like, let's be straight. There's a difference, and it's a virus.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, because I'm not vaccinated, my wife isn't vaccinated, and I have other vaccines. Like you said, like I'm not like anti-vax, but for me, when I saw this one come out, I'm like, oh, that's a little too fast. Mm-hmm. That's a little quick. Mm-hmm. And then I started doing a little bit of digging that I'm sure you were doing when all this first started. And I was like, oh, wait, why was there a vaccine patent before the virus? Interesting. So, and plus I was like, well, what's the cost? What's the reward of getting this vaccine? Like, or risk rather, not the cost, the risk. And I got COVID after Convergence. I got COVID at Convergence. The next week was like intense body aches everywhere, couldn't sleep. It was like a nervous system aching. And then I was super, super sick, had no energy, for about a week and a half and lost taste and smell within all of that as well. But I'm fine. I'm out on the other side. I have the antibodies now. We should be good to go. And I think what a lot of people don't realize, because it's just not being portrayed this way. And I have done a lot to keep myself out of everything that's going on, because I'm like, most of this doesn't affect me in my life. So why bother myself with it when I'm here with my daughter and my wife, and I'm much better here than sending my thoughts and my energy elsewhere. But one thing that it's just still floors me is like, this vaccine doesn't create immunity.
Right.
It lessens symptoms. And like, that's the part that I'm like, it baffles my mind how people are so hell bent on, if I don't get it, then I'm the problem. And I'm like, but am I really? Because you can still get it. Like, you're just not going to have the intense symptoms. And like, that's all fine and well if you guys want that. But for me, I'm like, I'll take the risk. I'm willing to bet on my body. It's fought off a lot of viruses over the years. And I'm willing to bet that I can do it one more time with the proper nutrition and rest. So yeah, man, I'm right there with you. So with this, how has this brought you to an edge with like talking about it with family? Because I don't want to like get down the rabbit hole on conspiracies and what people think and believe about this. But for me, this has been a huge growth edge for tolerance, to be honest, like tolerance and patience. And finding my center like in the middle of conversations where like me and one of my best friends saw complete opposite of this, and it drove us apart. We started fighting about it like over social media, like on Instagram DMs and stuff. And I deleted all my social media when that happened. I'm like, this is wrong.
Yeah.
Like, silly opinions and posts should not pit brother against brother. And so that was a huge growth edge for me. So what have you found for you as you've been navigating these waters, and especially as you've been probably having conversations with family leading up to seeing them around the holidays?
Yeah. Similar thing actually happened to me on Twitter maybe 6 months ago. Me and a semi-famous comedian got into an exchange together. A friend of mine had him on the show a couple of times. And I realized after that, I was like, damn, like Twitter turns me into a demon. Like I don't want to participate in this. If you fight against, then you enter the realm of war, and you're always at war, and it's never enough. And, I've come a long way from some of the ways that I used to communicate. And yeah, that's the same thing for me, as I'm trying to stay in my center and hold my integrity, with poise, with calmness, with compassion, with curiosity. It's hard. But I know that's the way. I know the way isn't to fight against, yell, because you can't. There's no winning. There's no amount of like charts or graphs or logic, because for everything that you have, they have something else that counteracts it from some other source. So
Totally,
it's a really wild time to be alive. It's similar to talking to somebody who's in a cult. They can't see that they're in what they're in. And, maybe I'm in one, I don't know, but I feel pretty confident that I'm not. I mean, we all get how we can, like you said, we could go down the rabbit hole too. Cause it's like how much of what I think is actually what I think. And, but I try and do a good job of critical thinking and really, silence and sitting with myself and meditating and contemplating and going in, and medicine journeys help a lot. And so, yeah, being patient, being calm, having compassion, and just showing up with love, and not demonizing or vilifying those who are choosing differently than me. That's been the job. Like, that's been the edge, that's been the task for me to maintain my composure, maintain my calm. And just the same way that I've been doing with psychedelics, over the last like decade, I've just been kind of just sharing links, sharing things, just like, hey, take a look at this. This is interesting. Or, just kind of steadily planting seeds without any expectation of any
Sure.
return, but just dropping what I feel is worthy of sharing with people. And then staying in my integrity and speaking my truth. Like I had a friend come over a couple of weeks ago and he was like, yeah, you just, go to this concert, just have to show your Vax card. You can get in. I was like, oh, I can't go. And he's like, why, you're not vaxxed? I was like, no. He's like, oh, dude, yeah, you should get that, man. And I was just like, yeah, I know. I'm probably not though. And then it kind of like fizzled a little bit, but in those moments where, Dave Chappelle has a great joke where he's like, you ever talk away that you don't talk? Someone's like, hey, how you doing? You're like, fine, how are you? It's like, damn, I don't even talk like that. It's just kind of like mirror neuron kind of thing on a psychological level. We tend to like mirror how the other person's saying, hey, how you doing today? Like, great, how are you? It's like, wait, I'm not great. Like, what the hell? So just recognizing how I'm really feeling about something and then being able to say that in a calm way without getting argumentative about it or going into an emotional thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel that because, and for me, the way that it's processing for me is I've been learning how to stand in my power and in what I believe to be true and not be swayed by others. Like I used to be swayed by others in the way that they spoke and the way that they talked about things and be like, oh, well, I guess you do bring up a few good points, but like, with this, I've done enough research on my own to know what's what. At least for me, the way that I see it, I'm like, yeah, I have enough information to know what I believe to be true for me. It may not be the truth because there's always some agenda in some article or some study. And you got to look at who's funding the study. Anyone who's going to do some research on some shit, like look who's funding it. That'll tell you what the agenda is. But that's what I had to do. And it got to the point where I had my whole family's vaccinated. Extended family, like brother and sister, mom, dad. And like my brother-in-law, as you were saying, with your brother, he had to get vaccinated in order to keep his job.
Yeah.
And like, it was such a bummer when I heard that because he very much has the same stance that we do. But at the same time, he's like, what the fuck am I supposed to do? Yeah. Like got a daughter, just a little bit older than mine. And yeah, it's just been a really big growth edge to learn how to stand in my power. And like when someone says something, or like, for example, your friend that talked about the Vax card, just to be like, I'm not going to do that though. Like that's good. That's good for you. Like, I'm happy that you feel really good about that decision, but for me, I'm going to choose not to. And I think it's time that we get back to a space where we can have different opinions and still be friends and still get along. Like that's something that has been just so glaringly obvious, especially when I was still on social media and still having like these little like thumb battles with people, like getting into text arguments or whatever about it. It's like, you know what? We can think differently. That's okay. And we can still be friends. And there's just a certain level of respect and like allowing someone to be their own sovereign being rather than thinking that, oh, you have to go with what everyone's saying because you have to go with what everyone's saying. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that was one of the core principles of the libertarian ideology that really attracted me to it was it's the principle of non-aggression, which says, I have the right to be a free and sovereign being. And I also have the right not to have my freedom infringed upon me, by anybody else, as long as I'm causing no harm. If I'm causing no harm to anybody else, then, my choice is my choice. And, basic goodness, don't hurt people, don't force people to do things, don't take their stuff. So yeah, I think if more people embody the perspective of like, hey, if that's what you want to do, great. That's not what I want to do. And we can coexist in that way. That would be great.
Yeah. So to bring it to fungi.
Yeah.
I'm sure there have been a number of ceremonies that you've had since the pandemic has begun. Has there been any major like lessons or things that you've taken from any of those ceremonies where you're like, man, yeah, this is what the world needs right now, or this is what I needed right now to hear in order to have some form of healing happen within your life with relationships, what have you?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's sort of transcended this. It's been uh more about just, hey, everything is fine. There's magic in the world, and that magic and that light just never goes out.
Mm-hmm.
So, keep focusing on bringing the magic, keep focusing on developing myself into my fullest potential to offer magic to others, to be, a guiding light, truly, in the true sense of the word. So, yeah, it's just continuously shown me that everything is malleable, everything transmutates and augments and changes, and that it's bigger than any one individual, but if we all find our own strength and our own power and tap into our potential and unleash our God-given magic, that we're going to be fine.
Yeah, that speaks to flow for me, and like just allowing things to flow. I used to be very rigid in how I wanted things to get done, or be very like, it has to go this way, or I've made up my mind, so it must be this way. Have different mushroom trips allowed you to understand flow a little bit more? Because I'm just curious to hear just your experiences with that, because I'm sure there's brothers out there that have never tried this before, or not even brothers, but anybody who's listening who've never tried mushrooms before, or are curious of what it's like to go into it in a ceremonial type setting, rather than I'm just going to do it as like a party drug. You know what I mean? So can you speak on that a little bit?
Yeah, the ceremonial aspect of it.
Yeah, the ceremonial aspect, and like what that's brought to you, and the experiences that you've been having.
So I said magic a bunch of times, and what is that really? I think it's, Bruce Lipton has a great book called The Biology of Belief, where he kind of, breaks down how we believe, what we believe, the environment in which we're in, the continuous feedback loop of us inventing things in our environment and those things inventing us in return, and how that affects us on a cellular level. That magic is sort of this, I don't know, it's a weird thing. Like, what do you hear when you hear magic? When I say magic, what comes to mind?
For me, like, okay, so first thing is like wizardry. I've been obsessed with magic since I was a little kid, and as I've grown older, I've started to have a better understanding of the real magic that's in the world. So I'm excited to hear you talk about this. But like the first thing I think of is like straight up wizardry, or like spells or things like that. But like the next thing that I go to, that the visual that I got is just like energy waving. Like I just saw like just this very gentle wave of energy. And that's kind of a little bit of a reflection of kind of how I view magic, and what it means to me now.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Energy. Yeah. If you want it, Nikola Tesla said, if you want to understand the secrets of the universe, learn about energy, frequency, and vibration. And Aleister Crowley famously said, I think magic is the intent, like the intention or focus of one's will. And so ceremonially with psilocybin, it is the focused intention putting into working with these magical beings, these magical, intelligent fungi beings, in a sort of a symbiotic, participatory way. What do I want out of this? The set and setting is sort of the standard in psychedelic circles. If you want to have a good trip, have a good set and setting, control all the things in your environment so that you could allow yourself to surrender to no control of what's going to be taken away by the experience. And so basically it's programming our experience. We can program it in any kind of way. I mean, I could do a ceremony with this glass of water right here, and we can drop into a serious and sincere space to honor the water, to, I could tell stories about it. We can do little rituals around it. And if we drink it in a very conscious and intentional way, maybe with some breathing or lying down, some guided meditation, something's going to happen. We're going to maybe it'll just be, we have more of appreciation for water or deeper reverence for it. Right. So psychedelics and theogens, sacred earth medicines are the same way. It's what we bring to the experience. So in a ceremonial setting, I'm usually saying, what am I going to school for to learn right now?
Oh, I like that.
I'm approaching the medicine as teachers, because they're a great intelligence beyond what we can understand. I think as humans, we have quite the hubris to try and want to label and compartmentalize things as well, we can measure it. We can understand it quantifiably, look at the results, look at the studies, look at the brain images, and et cetera, et cetera. But it's, I tend to lean more towards the animistic view, or, the view that everything is alive, that everything has intelligence, and that if we listen, that we can participate in that intelligence as well. So I would say the difference between doing it recreationally and doing it ceremonially is the intention that I bring to it. What am I looking to gain? What am I looking to get out of this? What questions am I bringing to my teachers, the fungi? And, how am I wanting to program myself?
Yeah. So what does a typical set and setting look like for you then? Because I've heard set and setting, and I know what that looks like for me, but for those out there, what does that look like for you?
Cozy, comfortable, furry, warm, just blankets, pillows. Usually if I could be in nature, yes, 100%. I would, if it's cold and I can't really be in nature, then inside, dark room, quiet. Yeah. As one of my favorite thinkers, Terence McKenna, said, 5 dried grams in silent darkness is the way to go. And so for me, I try and just have it be me and the medicine, and no other sort of, nothing else really, and having things by my side that I need. I don't typically have anyone sit for me when I do this. I started out doing it in 2014 in this way. Other people who are maybe less experienced, I would 100% recommend having someone sit for you. So a trip sitter, a guide, a facilitator, somebody that's there. I mean, I usually, tell people, hey, I'm going in tonight. So, I'll report back from the other side, but, just making sure that people know what you're doing, right? You don't want anyone, if you're doing it in your room one night and your wife comes home, you don't want it to be a surprise.
Yeah.
So having, telling people that you're doing it, setting your intention, like I was talking about. And then, usually I do some kind of a ritual beforehand, say a prayer, sit and do a meditation, do a little breath work. I'll probably light some sage, some Palo Santo, maybe, some copal, things like that. Just, your senses are heightened. So it always feels good when there's good smells and good, some water, some juice, some fresh fruits, things like that. And just a safe environment, just making sure that you're not in an environment where, there's, a big glass mirror or something that if you trip, you could break it and cut yourself or whatever. Just, you want to be in a really safe, cozy, comfortable, warm, fuzzy environment.
I love that. Yeah, that sounds a lot like the trip. So my wife and I mentioned this when we talked the other day. We got mushrooms, we got psilocybin as a wedding gift from a friend of mine, which was dope. It was amazing. And so for us, we had the trip together, and it was only 1.5 grams. which I think for the first time that felt really comfortable. It was enough to like create an experience without going way overboard. And we didn't have a sitter. And we had a very similar setting because we just the place that we lived at the time, our basement didn't have any windows except for our offices. And so like the main part, we could close all the doors and it'd be perfectly dark. We had blankets out, candles. I'm pretty sure Palo Santo and sage were present. Those are staples in our household. And then the one thing, because you talked about silence, we actually went and had just nature sounds because we wanted to be outside. But we lived in Wisconsin, and it was cold at the time. I think it was probably November or something, so we weren't really able to be outside. But we had these nature sounds, and man, that was one of the coolest experiences for me to have, is to listen to the nature sounds with my eyes closed, and it was like I was teleported there, and to feel that closeness with nature without actually being out in nature was wild. Yeah, it was wild to just feel so just interconnected with all of it without actually being there. And really, I'm just laying on a couple of blankets on the floor in my basement, you know?
Yeah. I'm a big fan of the musician East Forest, who is my most recent podcast guest. He has an album he made called Music for Mushrooms. And it's amazing. I think it's like 7 hours, and it's all improvised during a mushroom ceremony that he recorded himself. So it's fantastic, and I highly recommend it. I usually play that in larger group ceremonial settings. For myself, I sometimes will play music, but I notice that I just get so taken by the experience that I don't even hear the music anymore. I'm just in like another world. So.
Oh, totally. There were so many moments where I had no idea music was playing. And then I would hear like a sharp bird sound or something, and they would bring me back to the music. Oh, that's right. There's all of this happening at the same time too. I had no clue of it. I was definitely somewhere different.
Yeah.
Amazing. So there's so many lessons that can be taught by these beautiful teachers. If you could tell us what one of the top ones are, just one of them, that you've been able to really carry with you, that like you've thought back on maybe a couple of times as like, holy shit, yeah, this was a really profound realization or epiphany or lesson learned. Is there one that comes to mind?
We're gods, and this is infinite.
Keep going.
We as human beings have chosen to be in this game of duality because it's fun. Diversity and novelty is fun. I'm looking at you right now. You have a wicked mustache. It's sick, man. Like, I like that. I don't think I could rock that. I think I've tried a couple times, but it's fun. You're a different person, and that's fun. The different cultures, different foods, different music, different genres, the diversity and the newness, the novelty that the psychedelic experience provides to us is possible in this world. We live in a world of infinite possibilities and infinite creation. It's only fear, giving into fear that holds us back. And we are very clever. We invent a lot of things that are quite magical. What we're able to do right now is pretty magical. I'm able to talk to you through these wires and look at you on this screen. I mean, it's indistinguishable from magic, as Arthur C. Clarke has said. Any advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. So it's we're playing a game of forgetting and remembering, and it's eternal. This is eternity. We're in eternity right now.
Yes.
And it's kind of fun to forget. It's kind of fun to forget and to play the game of duality, because playing the game of the infinite all gets boring after a while. You're like, man, I want some company here. So I think that it's our jobs as people who have these experiences and who understand things to be in this way, to gently remind each other that we're already home. And, there's no place to be or no place to go or nothing to do other than just to be love. We like, so many people are searching for love. I think you just become it, and then you got it, and it's a hard thing to do, especially in our culture, because we live in a culture of separation and forgetting. They want the way that it's designed. I mentioned that we invent clever things. We're very clever as human beings. And I think a lot of times we think we're more clever than God. We try and outsmart God, for lack of a better term. You could call it source or one or the infinite, the most high, whatever, the everything that can't be comprehended, can only be felt. And you can only feel it and then choose to have faith in that. It's not even a question of faith, I guess, if you have the felt sense of that experience. It's more a question of just deep knowing. But yeah, I think what we do is we invent a lot of things, and we kind of like trap ourselves in these inventions. We come up with clever things. We're like, oh man, this is so clever. Like the internet, computers, social media, and then it winds up being a whole shitstorm that we got to figure out a way out of.
Yeah.
And I think that's, it's messy. It's a massive RPG game that we're in, and it's messy and it's real, and the stakes are real, but it's also fun. There's one of my favorite books of all time is this book called The Finite and Infinite Games. And I'm bringing it up because this is how I try, this is how I understand things to be, is that we play in the realm of duality and finite games where there's a clear, definitive start and end, and there's a winner and loser. And it's fun. It's fun to do that. It's fun to play, like watch a football game and root for your team. You want your team to win, but you're not going to you're probably not going to kill over that, right? Because you remember, you're like, oh, it's just a game. Yeah. It's just a game. So the infinite game is the point of the infinite game is to keep the game going. I equate it to being at a concert and there's a beach ball going around in the air. The point of that isn't to smash it down and like win. The point is just keep the ball going, just keep it up in the air. And I think that's what we're doing here. We're just continuously forgetting and remembering and trying not to wreck the whole thing too much, and just keep that ball in the air so we could keep having fun and keep being alive and thriving. And there's a lot of horrible shit that happens, but there's a lot of beautiful shit that happens too.
Yeah, and that's a beautiful analogy of the beach ball, because I was able to picture that and recall a moment that I was there when there was a beach ball going up, and you're like, yeah, like the name of the game is just to keep it in the air. It's like the little game that played with like nieces and nephews is keep a balloon up in the air. Like toss it up, very similar, and all they're trying to do is just keep it up. There's no winner, there's no loser, because you win or you lose as a team. Right. But one of the things that you said that I think is really important that I want to circle back to, because I wholeheartedly agree with it, is that we are in this loop of forgetting and remembering. Because like for me, I hold the belief that I chose everything that's going to happen in my life long before I came back to Earth, but I forgot it all, because what fun is it if I knew it was coming next? Right. And
yeah, you don't want the spoilers for your life. Yeah.
No, exactly. And so that for me then brings up the unknown, and how there's a lot of men that are afraid of the unknown. They want to have a plan. They want to know what's going to happen next, because that feels safe. That feels like, okay, cool. I know what's happening. I can anticipate it. I can be prepared for it. But like in the end, you really don't. It's just a good guess most of the time, because anything can happen at any moment. And for me, it's been remembering that I chose all of this that's helped me be very comfortable with the unknown. Still uncomfortable, like still have moments where I'm like, holy shit, how am I actually going to do this thing? Like before my daughter was born, literally up until that moment, I was just like, what the actual fuck am I doing? What is happening? And even like the first handful of weeks, I mean, any parent can relate to this. I would think, unless you're just like a god you are. But unless you're just like a natural at being a parent, it's terrifying.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I have no idea what's happening next. I don't know what to do. I have no idea what's going to happen tomorrow. And it's only now looking back on it that I'm like, yeah, that was actually kind of a lot of fun. Like there were nights where at the beginning of Lila's life, she just did not sleep. And part of that is because babies, their days and nights are flipped when they're in the womb. And so her active hours were at night from like 9 p.m. till about 3 a.m. So my wife and I, for the first like 3 weeks, we had a long, like 6-foot plastic foldable table that we loaded up with snacks down in our basement, turned on Netflix, and we just camped out. And we got to this point so many times where we were so sleep deprived that we became delusional. Like there was a certain time of night where all of a sudden Megan, my wife, would stop making sense. There would be a sentence, there would be a moment where she'd say something and I would look at her and be like, that actually made no sense. I tried to figure out what you were saying. That was complete gibberish. And then that was my moment to know, like, all right, time to turn on dad mode. Like I got to get the fam to bed. Megan's gone. She's losing it. She is no longer any help. I now need to be the sole captain of this ship for the rest of the night. But I had no idea that any of that was going to happen beforehand. And how much fun would it have been if I did know, and like, how may I have, and for others, like if we knew what was happening, worry about it or stress about it ahead of time. Cause she's like, oh shit, I know that I got this thing that's going to be coming up here in a handful of months. I better be prepared for it. Like, that's just no fun. It's just no fun. And so dancing with the unknown is so much better and so much more exciting, especially when the understanding that you were laying out for us of we are gods. We did choose all of this. This is all just one big game.
Yeah. And I should clarify, I don't want to sound like some pretentious prick and be like, hey, we're all gods, so just do whatever you want. But, one of my favorite books of all time is by Ernest Becker called The Denial of Death. He says, we're gods with anuses. So we're in this like split crazy predicament where we have the capacity for unbelievable magic to ponder and contemplate the infinite, yet we're housed in these like meat sacks of decaying, stinky, hairy bodies that will eventually just be food for worms. Like that's sort of our predicament, is like, we know about our own demise. I don't think any other creature knows about its own mortality. So, I think that's sort of the confounding paradox of our nature, and it's to remember, like, yes, we are the infinite, and also we are playing the finite. Yeah.
So interesting question. Based on what you just said, we're in these like decaying meat suits. You know how our cells all regenerate every however many days? Mm-hmm. Why do we age? Is age really just in our minds? Do we have this time limit on life? And so therefore our entire body and our cells are like, oh, well, I guess I better map to this because you said 85. So I guess it's 85. Like that's something that I've thought about, especially as we're getting into just like consciousness and reality and how our own thoughts can shape our reality and like the energies, the intention that we set behind it. So like, I will casually say to people with a complete straight face, dead serious, I'm going to be 350. I will live to be 350 years old, because there's accounts in the Bible of like Moses being like fucking 600 years old, So do you have any thoughts on that? Because that's just been a fun thought that I've had. And since we're down this road of consciousness, I'm like, man, if all of our cells regenerate, why do we even age? Why do we even age in the first place?
Cool question. I mean, I've heard some people say that aging is the number one cause. Like, what is it? Oh, death is the number one cause of death, or something like that.
Dying is the leading cause of death.
Yeah,
or something to that effect.
Aubrey de Grey is his name, and he's like trying to come up with a cure for death. They say that it's like, Yeah, it's just like, hey, it's this one problem that's facing us that we just haven't really figured out. I mean, I don't really know. I haven't really thought about it too much. I guess if I go back to the game analogy, I just say, I don't know, any game that you just keep playing, eventually you just get tired of and want to play something else.
Sure.
So, and baking in that unknown is also makes it fun and exciting too, because, well, I will say this, we live in a culture detached from death in a way. We have a perverse,
completely.
Yeah. I mean, there's like a hyper perverse narrative of this, like I was talking in the beginning with the pandemic thing, like, do we fear death so much that we forget to live? Like at what cost are we willing to, like, are we all just going to hide in our beds and you could be the safest person, wear a helmet next time you go to the grocery store or whatever, it's like we could bubble and insulate ourselves, but is that really what we're trying to do here? I don't think so. I think that we feel most alive the closer we are to death. Like the more we take risks, the more that we push ourselves out of our comfort zones, the most, the times where we feel even like, oh, I want to speak, I want to say something that's contrary to what the general consensus is, that could feel like a death because you're then ostracized from the community. And hunter-gatherer times, that meant, you're out of here, pal. You're cast into the forests that probably die.
Totally.
So we're totally, I mean, I think we have so much going on in our lives right now that I don't think we have like a real understanding or reverence for what it means to be alive. And so we can't really appreciate the death process either. It's a big, big fear too. People are constantly talking about it in this really terrible way. Ram Dass says, death is like taking off an old tight shoe. It's just, you're just changing into something else. Yeah. I don't know if I necessarily believe him or not. I'm not really sure what I believe, but I do just know that it is. And hey, if somebody comes out with something that extends life or something like that, yeah, maybe I'll give it a shot. I think that's a worthy game to pursue, right? Like the diversity and novelty of things, but there's always unintended consequences. So we have to be careful with the power that we tap into. I think that's one of humanity's biggest lessons that we have to learn is like, yes, we can invent cool things. Cool. We can invent planes that fly from a remote control with no pilot in it. That's pretty cool. What's not pretty cool is strapping bombs on those things and then just dropping them all over the place. Like, yeah. So it's like, we gotta kind of like learn how to, our consciousness needs to evolve to the level of our technology. And I don't think we're quite there yet. So yeah, I mean, I think that that's a cool question. I'm definitely going to think about that more. I don't know. I mean, it's the mystery. It's the great mystery. I think being comfortable, like you said before, I think I definitely feel more comfortable with the unknown, with chaos, and with the mystery than trying to have to figure it out or solve it.
Yeah, because that's kind of the thing that I think a lot of people, and I got stuck in this for a while, is trying to figure it out. Mm-hmm. And I've gotten to the point where I've started to understand, and there's still days and moments where I have a hard time coming to terms with it, but there's nothing to figure out. Like at the end of the day, there's nothing to figure out. And what you were saying about like enjoying life, I was talking with a buddy the other day about crypto, and he was telling me all these different things that he was doing with crypto. And I was just like, holy shit, man, that sounds insanely complicated. Yeah. I'm like, granted, I'm sure I could understand it, but like, man, what about simplicity? Like, where's the simplicity? And that's been something that's been really speaking to me lately. Maybe it was about 5 months ago, I started being a full-time stay-at-home dad. And so I began letting go of the idea of money making to better be dad and to just be present. Because I'm a Gemini. I'm very heady, very thinking. I love it. It's the shit. But I will go down a rabbit hole, and that'll be the only thing I think about for the entire day. Mm-hmm. And so I needed to take a step back, because I started to realize that I wasn't being present with my daughter. And that's something that I hold very near and dear to me, of like, I'm here with her. Like if I'm
Yeah.
with her, I'm with her. I'm not going to continue the absent father. Like, I'm not going to continue that
Right.
path. Even if I'm physically present, cause I had that growing up a little bit where my dad just wasn't as emotionally present. And so that's something that's been very important to me. And so therefore I've started to just really simplify life and get really, really clear on like what matters. And I think that that's something that we've gotten very far away from, especially as we invent new things, have all these new technologies like cryptos, NFTs, like all these different things. Like there's so much for us to get wrapped up in and consumed by on a daily basis that I'm just like, man, where's the simplicity? Like what really, really matters in life? Like, is making money really what matters? And I hope that there's people out there that would agree that no, at the end of the day, no, we were not born and put here just to make money. I think it's far more than that. We're here to have fun and play and experience and connect and discover the magic of life and what it has. And so, yeah, I don't know where I was really going with this. It was just really like driving home. Like, I think simplicity is what, I know has benefited my life over the last handful of months. And I think that there's some ways that the men and women that are listening could probably simplify their lives to bring a bit more happiness and fulfillment. So I don't know if you can relate or if that hits home at all.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Can I ask you, what was it like for you to go through that transition? Like, what were you doing before you became a full-time stay-at-home dad? And how was that process for you to kind of leave that older world behind?
Yeah. So I was a Forex trader.
Okay.
And before that, I was multiple different things. Like I did like food delivery. I did tons of different things because I've always had a hard time working for others. And so was a network marketer for many years as well. And yeah, it was a really tough transition. Tough in the sense of my presence. And like, that's been very alive for me, even the last couple of days. I've been really struggling with being present and like fully present. Because there's just, I don't know, there's just this trying to find the right words for it, but like when I'm fully present, there is just a level of just ease and peace that I feel that I don't feel any other time.
Yeah.
And that was the thing that I didn't feel very often during the transition. Was I was fighting this old belief system that had been fed to me, that had been given to me by my dad and passed down from his dad of, hey, you're the man of the house. You are the breadwinner. You make the money, you go out and do the thing, and wife stays home with the kids. That was my upbringing. My mom was a stay-at-home mom for a while. And so it was a lot of letting go of those beliefs and having the awareness that those aren't mine, that those aren't the things that matter to me, and like having that differentiation. That takes a lot of like my mental presence to get to that point, but also just time, just sitting in silence, sitting in meditation. For me, cannabis is like the top plant medicine that I use. And that has been
a great one.
It has facilitated so many different trains of thought that like at the end of the day, especially on a hard day, I remember when I was first really working on letting go of like making money and even starting this podcast, not getting into the mindset of, okay, I need to be making money doing this. It's like, no, do this for the sake of, I love having conversations. I love talking with people and sharing stories and connecting and like the work, the growth. I love all of that. And so it was very difficult to let go of this idea of making money. But there was one night in particular that I just smoked a shit ton, because I'm like, okay, I need to be in my head. I need to go inside and be in this like mind castle and work through some shit. Because write journaling. I audio journal if I do anything, because writing is just too slow for me. And so typically what I do is I'm just sitting and I'm in my own head, and I'm able to navigate that conversation with myself. But it was a lot of basically telling myself that it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
Like, just like reminding myself that like God's got my back.
Yeah.
God has had my back my entire life. Why would anything change now when I'm only diving deeper into what's most true and important for me? And that's been something that I've had to remind myself of so many times as I've been releasing this belief that I had to make money, and that if I'm not making money, then I'm not of value and I'm not worthy, and all of these different things, and changing that to my value comes from how I am as a father and a husband, period.
Yeah.
Like, that's it. Those are the things that matter to me. And like, and being like a son and a brother and like those things too. But like, those are the things that matter. And that's where I derive my worth from now, more so than before. It was, okay, what's the job title? What does it pay? Does it have good benefits? If it doesn't have benefits, you're going to have to negotiate a little bit better benefit package, like, or whatever it was, you know? And so it was challenging. It was challenging. And it was a huge shift of where my personal self-worth came from.
Yeah. Well, amazing. I mean, it sounds great. You're doing it. Like, that's, if you can remind yourself, right? There's that remembrance again, what's really truly important, what really matters. And that surrendering into that unknown, and giving into like what you feel passionate about, what you care about, then all the money comes. I think, it's like the backwards law, as I think Alan Watts talked about. It's like, when we desire something, we actually create suffering. But if we let go of the desire for that thing, we enjoy it, and then the thing comes. So it's like when we're striving for something, when we really desperately want something, or trying to figure something out, that's usually when there's a lot of suffering and pain and obstacles and challenges. But when we can just kind of let go and just be like, okay, what's really important here? Let me just focus on that. Then the other things, as a result, inevitably come in due time.
Yeah. Well, and that comes back to what we were talking about with setting for psilocybin, like your intention. I think when we strive for something so much so that we're hyper focused on the fact that we don't have it, that's what we're constantly telling the universe. Like, our body is like pulsing however many millions of times a second and sending out this vibration, and the universe doesn't know don't, or I don't want this, or no, it just here. If you're saying like, I don't have the money right now, but I want to have the money, all it hears is I don't have the money. And they're like, great, let's give you more of that. That's what you're telling me. We're going to give you more of that. But once we begin to just enjoy the thing for the thing itself, then the vibration that we're at is, oh, I love this. Oh my gosh, this is so much fun. I'm finding so much fulfillment. This feels so good. And we take our focus off of the things that we don't have, and then they just kind of fall into place.
Yeah. So that's the work, is to transcend that paradigm, because that's the world of separation and forgetting that we live in, which is constantly pumping these messages in that we need more, we got to be more, we got to do more. This is what a man looks like, this is what a man does, this is how you got to be, this is the new style for fall 2022, whatever the hell this is the new thing, that you're not up on it, you're not hip, you're old, you're gonna die, you're fat, you're lazy, you got to hustle harder, grind, that, whatever it is, you're missing out on an opportunity. NFTs, you're missing out, people are making millions, da, 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 da. It's just a whole lot of noise that wants to suck you up into that never good enough, it's never going to be good enough mentality, which is just causes a lot of suffering for a lot of people. It's like, it's never going to be as good as it is when you're just totally here.
Yeah. Oh, completely. Because I've got sucked into like thinking about NFTs, and I'm like, I could draw something that looks ridiculous and make hundreds of thousands. Why not? But it's like, do I really love that? Do I really want to do that? Or am I just chasing the dollar? And like, that can go for so many other things than just NFTs. Like, do you really love what you're doing, or are you just chasing the dollar?
Right. Yeah. I have friends like that will constantly talk to me about like I run a men's circle, a weekly men's circle in Denver. We're calling it the Tribe of Brothers, and meets every Wednesday night in Denver. And we have all kinds of men that show up, and there's a guy there, and he came by my house not too long ago, and he's like, dude, this whole crypto space and this and that. And he's like, I'm telling you, it's all about the metaverse. Everything is going into the metaverse. This is like first movers are going to make, and I'm listening to him and I'm like, oh yeah, okay. Yeah. And I'm just thinking like, I don't want to help participate in creating that world.
Yeah.
I don't want to fund and fuel that growth. And we're so conditioned in our culture to always try and look out for ourselves and make sure that we're safe and secure. And if there's an opportunity, strike while, hey, if you got into Uber when it was really like first came out, you would have been rich, like Gary Vaynerchuk and all this stuff. Or I think he passed on Uber. I forget which one, but just all this stuff about like the opportunity, the money, the thing. And a lot of times we get lost in saying like, hey, wait a second, what am I voting for here? Like,
Yeah.
what am I choosing to put my time, energy, and attention to help build and perpetuate? What kind of a world comes out of this? And I've been that's something that I've been thinking a lot about lately. And a big edge for me is getting really real with myself about like integrity when it comes down to everything that I do, everything where I put my money, who I bank with, how I use Amazon. Should I use Amazon? All these things. How much plastic am I using? Am I being conscious about that? It's just like really trying to get really real with, I want to live in a world that I know is beautiful and magical and full of nature and abundance and joy and happiness. And, much like a lot of the feelings that I've had when I've been to epic retreats or convergences, or music festivals. There's just this sense of like total liberated, free, fun, and harmony and respect. A lot of respect too. So anyway, just really thinking about that a lot. Is like really trying to get real with that. Like I'm probably going to wind up pulling a lot of my money out of one of my bank accounts because I'm like, hey, these guys actually fund some stuff that's not so great for the planet. And maybe I shouldn't bank with them. Maybe I should look into a local credit union. I think that is ultimately a good idea. And I've been talking about it for a while, and now I'm like, okay, I got to put this into practice more. I think that anytime that we get turned on to a new idea or a new way of thinking, it's like, all right, yeah, I can do a little bit of this or do a little bit of that. And then there's like there's new things that always come to light. I'm like, oh yeah, shit, I forgot who I bank with. That's probably important too. Like where are they? What are they funding? What are they fueling? So yeah, I think that like in a real sense, money is just about like casting a vote for what we want. And at least that's how I look at it. And I also look at it as energy. It's just like if you're putting energy into something that you love and you care about, money is just something that is like a representation of energy given back. Like, hey,
Yes.
good on you. You're doing a good thing.
Yeah, I see it the exact same way. And I used to bank with one of the larger like banks in the country. And now my wife and we've moved to a smaller credit union right here in town.
Awesome.
Cause yeah, we had similar feelings of, there's been some not great things about them in the news lately, or no, I don't think I really feel all that great about that anymore. And so, yeah, it was a very, very quick decision. Like when it was made, we were like, nope, this is what feels right. We're going to do this. And I think that's so important to go with your gut, go with your intuition. Like I mentioned this to you the other day, like that's how I'm leading this entire podcast is all off of intuition. Like I've thought none of it through, like thought nothing through, but that's so beautiful. Because I think that there's so many times that we can get caught up in overthinking something or trying to look at it logically and trying to fully understand it before we jump in or before we make some decision. And like we were saying before, like newer technologies are indistinguishable from magic.
Mm-hmm.
Why do we have to always understand something?
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
know, like there sometimes logic is, at least for me, the way that I see it is that logic is sometimes just the ego's way of keeping us in the little safe space. Because the ego is like, its job is to keep us safe, and it's freaking great at it. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
It has kept
too
me
good.
in. It's too good sometimes. It's kept me in loops.
It's it's just working like hours nonstop, run midnight oil. It's like, ego, take a break, man. You deserve a vacation. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, chill, bro. Relax a little. Like, we got this. It's gonna be okay. Man. And that was one of the biggest lessons that I had on my first mushroom trip, was to just like let the ego go. Like, stop trying to figure it all out. And the question that I went into that trip with was, revealed to me what's been hidden. And because I could just have this feeling that there was something that my ego was hiding from me, that I'm like, revealed to me what's been hidden, because there's something. And it was the fact that here, really very, very quite silly one. I laid down, or I decided I wanted to lay down, and so it happened. Super simple.
Yeah.
But like, now transpose that onto everything else. I decided this, and so it is.
Yeah.
Like that's been so true for me, is like being a stay-at-home dad. I knew I was going to be a stay-at-home dad at 16 years old. I don't know how, I don't know why. It was this almost irrational desire to be a stay-at-home dad. And it wasn't even a desire, it was a knowing. It was, I know this is what my life's going to be like. And I decided, and so it was. The universe is like, okay, if you want that, great, it's yours. You decided. I'm hearing you loud and clear. I will do exactly what you want, because you decided and you're sure. And yeah, beautiful lessons.
Yeah, indeed.
All right, Mike, I appreciate you taking the time today to sit with me, to share your wisdom, your medicine. So you mentioned that you have circles Wednesdays in Denver. Is there a time and a location that they're always at?
Yeah, it's at this place called The Garage on 52nd and Winecup. I forgot how to pronounce it. And then we have a Mighty Networks that we're going to be like officially launching, but we're thinking of that it's a good kind of limited and contained social media network to post about events, just like the Brothership. It's a great platform for all the things that we're interested in, what's going on. So we started a Mighty Networks, and I think it'll be a good resource for people in Colorado, in the Boulder and Denver area, and even people that are not here. We've had people fly in for some of the retreats and things that we've done. So it's really exciting. Yeah, I could send you the links, and then if you just want to like put them in the show notes or whatever, people can find out more about that. But yeah, it's been a real. I never thought that I would have gotten into what I'm into now with, I guess, what you would call men's work or masculine alchemy. Actually, that's a great term. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really have gotten so much out of it, and to be able to, the most rewarding thing is being in the presence of other brothers who are just starting to just put their foot in the door and figure out what this is, and oh my God, I'm not alone, and we don't have to do it alone, and we can actually celebrate and dance and be silly too. And so yeah, it's great. I'm very much invested in that, and more to come.
Cool. So I'm so happy that you talked about brothers just getting their foot in the door. There's bound to be at some point a brother that's listening to this that has never stepped into circle before and is feeling a little reserved. Are there any words of encouragement for them, or for someone who's listening that's like, man, I think this is calling to me, but I'm scared. I'm afraid to be that vulnerable, or man, I don't know if that's for me. Is there something that you could tell them that's maybe been helpful along your journey to allow yourself to step in and open up in these spaces?
That's the message that it is for you. That's the message that you should move towards it. If there's one thing that I learned, it's whenever I'm feeling a little bit of resistance, whenever I'm feeling a little bit of fear or feeling like something's uncomfortable, man, I could do such a good job of rationalizing myself out of it, right? Like ego can come in, we can get a whole, cosmic circus of trickery going on to convince myself that, nah, that's for those kinds of people. I'm not one of those kinds of people. We're all the same people at our core essence. We all just want love, to be loved, to feel understood, to not be alone, to have other people truly see us, even if it seems scary. So I would say, if it seems scary, if it seems like it's not for you, just try it. Just try it. Just give it a try. I think that what Wayne Gretzky said, right? You miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. Just take a shot. Yep. Take a shot. And because for me, my best friend invited me to his men's circle during the pandemic. And I said, what the hell is that? Like, no, like, I don't need that. I'm in an ayahuasca circles or mushroom circles, or I got psychedelic people here and there and podcast circles. And man, I go on my podcast and I speak openly and vulnerably. What do I need this for? I didn't understand the power of brotherhood, and so we all need it. I think that we all feel it when we're younger, before we're at the age where we can where we develop these things that prevent us or stop us. Like, we just, as kids, we tend to just go for it. And so I would just say, if you feel fear, if you feel resistance, that's a signal that maybe you should try it. Because I've noticed that over the course of my life, whenever there's like fear or resistance coming towards, if I just give it a shot, maybe there's something there for me, maybe not, but at least I gave it a shot.
Yeah. I love that, because it's like, what if you'd never tried pizza and pizza's your favorite food? But you looked at it and you're just like, that looks freaking ridiculous. I only eat things that are in the shape of squares. Never in my life will I touch a pizza. Like, what if it's something like that? What if it's something that, like, you're like, oh my God, where has this been my whole life? Because that's what it was like for me. When I found Sacred Sons, my first couple of circles that I sat in, I was like, holy shit, this is quite literally what I've been searching for my entire life. And it's just brotherhood. So I appreciate you taking the time to.
Yeah. Can I say one thing about Sacred Sons, by the way?
Please do. Please.
I've had a lot of medicine journeys. I've been a part of a lot of circles throughout my life. And when I went to Convergence, that was my first Sacred Sons experience. It was such a powerful medicine experience. The way that they, I think I love what they do, where they offer a scholarship to, I think, 1 in every 5 men. And you could tell that they just care. Like, they're so in it. They're not just like going through the motions. So that felt like, I felt that. And not only that, but as I was talking about before, about the diversity, like, the diversity is so important, just to see other beings going through their human experience, in their stories, in their culture, in their race, in their religion, whatever whatever they are and where they've come from. That's like so powerful in itself, just to bring all those brothers of different backgrounds together. Man, I mean, they're doing such an amazing thing to create healing for men on this planet. It's such a blessing to be a part of what they're doing.
Yeah, I'm so happy you said that, because I love Sacred Sons, and I was at Convergence 6 as well. That was my first in-person experience with them. And to just briefly wrap this up with what you were saying, is to experience and witness other men who look so different from me, because I live in the middle of Wisconsin. Like, the way that I would say it is, I live in bumfuck, like, nowhere, Wisconsin. Like, we all look alike out here. And so to be someplace where there's men from all different cultures, all different walks of life, and then to hear them talk about the same shit that I'm going through in my life, like, that for me has been one of the most healing and connecting things that I've been able to experience so far. Like, there was a specific Father's Council that I remember, where there's a brother from St. Petersburg, Russia, who is describing the exact same situation I was going through like 2 weeks prior. And I was like, oh my God, like someone on the complete opposite side of the world, a completely different way of life than I could even imagine. And we're going through the same thing. We're really not alone in this. So yeah, that's been something that Sacred Sons has driven home. And this conversation with you has made it even more apparent that, like, hey, we're not all that different. We're in this together. And like Sacred Son says, yeah, brotherhood is the medicine.
Brotherhood is the medicine, brother. Yes.
All right. Well, until next time, I love you. I see you. I am you. Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.